We're at the stage of the season, guys, and the stage of the offseason where even Ken Rosenthal is blasting the Marlins. Ken putting out a hit piece in The Athletic on the Marlins and their lack of activity. No free agents signed for the Marlins at all. Couple of minor trades, that is it. Peter Bendix declines to comment. What's going on in Miami? This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England. Welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Miami Marlins _UK. Yes, you are not hearing from Marlins Twitter Madness champ. No, another semifinal crusher. The whole country. I had to take on the whole country of Venezuela. And that country took me down. Danny Alvarez taking me down on that one. However, Marlins Twitter has a new queen this year. Claudia taking the plaudits. Some people be listening to this and going, what the hell is going on here? So we'll carry on with the intro and we'll circle back to that one. Firstly, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. This, of course, is your team every day. And there is a YouTube channel. So make sure you hit subscribe over there too. It is also called Locked On Marlins. This episode is also sponsored by our good friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $150 in bonus bets. Guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And I am delighted to welcome to the show on Monday, Sean. Not Sean Barrett, the UK goat. No, we're flexing it. We've got Sean Millerick in the house. I want to say this is the third time appearance, but could be more, could be less. I'm not even certain. But nevertheless, Sean, how are we doing, brother?
Doing great. Lulled to sleep by the Marlins a bit, but it's $150 more than the Marlins have spent this offseason at FanDuel. This offseason, but happy to be here, Pete.
Yeah, for sure, mate. I mean, like I mentioned on the intro there, when the national media are writing hit pieces on the Marlins, like it's time for us to dig into that. I think, and I think it's right. It's right that there's a hit piece happening, and we're going to dig into that. We'll spend plenty of time talking about that. Equally, for those that are listening and don't have the graphics to help, in terms of what else we've got queued up here, I want to talk about Josh Hader, not because the Marlins will sign him. He's already signed elsewhere. He's an Astro, 5-year, nearly $100 million. Josh Hader, big money. But the question I have is, how does that impact Tanner Scott? And how does that impact the Marlins? We'll talk about that. We also want to update everyone on international free agency. One of last week's pods, we talked about what the Marlins had done in 2024 with that class. Equally, we need to update it on what they're going to do in 2025. So we'll talk about that as well. So tons to get into here with Sean Millerick today on Locked On Marlins. Sean, Ken Rosenthal has put out there an article effectively calling out the Marlins to say they're off a postseason berth. The core is here. They haven't signed any free agents. Peter Bendix declines to comment on this situation and this story, adding no comeuppance, comeback, whatever it might be. Your assessment on this situation for the Marlins on Monday, the 22nd of Jan.
It's incredibly frustrating for a number of reasons. Mostly because of, I guess, how avoidable this story is. The story that they haven't spent a single, dollar on the field on an MLB free agent.
Crazy.
They could have signed one guy. It's a 26-man roster. They could have. This is not a story if they had signed one reliever or backup catcher. And obviously we'd love Cody Bellinger or some big signing. But pay someone $3 to $4 million to make this roster a teensy bit better. And this wasn't the headline that it's been since October. That meters kept running, teams have signed someone, and every time it seems in Marlins history that there's been a moment to build on some kind of positive momentum, they don't do it. And we don't need to, relitigate every instance, on the show today. Marlins, our audience is well familiar with the history, but it's kind of weird that Sherman has just kept, during his tenure, turning a blind eye to this. It's like he approaches it like his asset management business, that he thinks that Marlins fans are sound investors that are just going to trust his guidance because, he's the expert and he's going to maneuver the capital. And Marlins fans are neither your typical investor nor your typical sports fan. If he wants to think of the Marlins fans as investors, he needs to realize that they're investors who are beat up every day for their lunch money in school and grew up to be taken advantage of in multiple pyramid schemes before they decided to invest their money with Sherman. It's a very untrusting bunch. And so he needs to, show. And last season did kind of show it. It was that positive step again. Okay, GM made some good moves. Manager of the year hire in place. The owner spent some money at the deadline to push them into the playoffs. And then just when you think, okay, maybe the tide's turning, you're just back to square one. And then we're back to the non-spending narrative. And it's just so all those ghosts of Marlins past are back again.
Yeah, it's funny, right? There is this specific cycle for the Marlins when there's any inkling of success, and clearly in much further in the history of the club, the success was more sizable than just a wildcard series where they got absolutely spanked. But the cycle is get there. You're then in that situation of let's build the momentum, let's do something, but it doesn't go that way. After the 2020 year, the COVID year, when they made the postseason, 2021 ended up being absolutely turgid. I don't know. I'm slightly nervous in some ways about the direction of 2024, considering clearly no Sandy, which is a big impact. It's definitely a big impact. And I think that's as a general principle, is one of the reasons why, and I spoke about it last week, there's a sense of a rebuild brewing here because, and you can call it what you want. People want to call it a retool. Like I said rebuild because, I think the higher paid vets that are running low on service time in that they don't have much left, controllable years, the model says they should be moved. And so, man, Peter Bendix is out there, Sean. He's quoted saying basically that we're trying to be good on the field, but we're trying to build off the field. I'm not quite sure how you make that happen. To me, it feels a bit of a fallacy. I'm not sure how he makes that happen. But from your perspective, what is the Marlins' strategy? What is their philosophy at this point? Do you have a view on what they're trying to do in 24?
I mean, in terms of what they're doing off the field, this, plan they're putting into place under Bendix, I think, just want to stress that, all of that is positive, in your laying this, foundation. It's all things that needed to be reworked. And the fact that they can't develop a hitter to save their lives for many years now is a big problem. It needs to be fixed. It's unsustainable the way things are going. But you have to do both in this market. It just kind of goes back to that. You can't ignore the short term either. If you look at the South Florida sports market, where every team made the playoffs, in 2023, early off of those regular seasons, and Dolphins fans, they'll climb off the ledge over the next month, and Marlins fans would kill to be in that position. Wait, so we've had multiple winning seasons in a row. We've made the playoffs 2 years in a row. That's admittedly, maybe a kind of a low bar, but you'd be thrilled. You'd be over the moon. How would you feel if we're sitting here a year from now and you found out that the Marlins made the playoffs again and all their best players are under contract to come back in 2025? You'd be,
I know.
Yeah, you'd be
dancing. You'd be pumped again, right?
You'd be thrilled with it. You'd be pumped. Just they're not doing it. So I think there needs to be a little of both. Everything they've done is great, but they've just got to add on to. They've got to try to build, even if it's best case scenarios across the board. Low risk, high reward signings, and there's still plenty of time to do that.
Yeah,
but, that needs to be what they do. If they continued not adding at all, not doing anything to possibly build on 2024, that's where I have no answer for you, because that would just seem like malpractice to me.
That's the perfect word. Okay, so they're going to get something done. there'll be a couple of signings, a couple of Yuli Gurriels. I'm going to use that description where, a guy's out there and his market kind of dries. The next thing is, actually, go on. The Marlins is a decent fit. So there'll be a few Yulis. And who's to say Yuli Gurriel doesn't end up back in the Marlins? I don't know. It's possible. They do need, some cover at first base potentially if they don't want to give, our man Troy, who seems to be like, I've never heard a prospect as highly touted as Troy Johnson, to be honest with you. But they're going to sign a couple. They have to. So over-under on the number of free agents, big league free agents that are actually signed. I'm going to set the over-under at 2.5.
2.0, okay. If we're counting Yulis, I guess I'll take the over. Like I think it'll be a Yuli and then two people who you expect to make the team out of camp. So
yep, you're gonna hit that is a close.
Yeah,
that's not quite smashing the over. I would say that is kind of leaning the over on that, which kind of sums it up, right? I guess that's the position they're in, and I think the main frustration for me, I keep coming back to this, is this Jorge Soler situation where. We'll see what he ends up signing for. And I think clearly like Bruce Sherman will be hoping that Soler ends up signing like a stupid deal, like a 4-year, I don't know, 4-year, 80 million or something. And then go, hey, see, we were never doing that. But if Soler ends up signing like something that looks in the realm of what the Marlins could do, I think Sherman's going to have a big problem with that situation. But
yeah, 2 years, 36, that would be bad.
That's what I mean. This is it. Like the optics could look really bad if Soler ends up signing something that is achievable for the Marlins. And frankly, it should be achievable. And he was such a big piece of this team last year, like 2023. Him and Arias, that was all the offense was for like the first 3 months. And this whole qualifying offer not extending it to him was, to me, I've no idea why they didn't do that. I just still can't understand it, because you've got a draft pick just sitting there. You're going to return. Like, I've no idea. What did they forget to do it? I don't know. So Peter Bendix is a switched on dude, and it feels like the front office has been bolstered with tons of big thinking dudes. But my challenge at this point is I'm struggling to understand the direction. And considering where this roster is, and it doesn't need a ton of work, I'm just kind of scratching my head working out, why aren't we adding? Well, there's still time. But why is all the rumors about trading Luzardo and Arias at this point, which there's kind of, there's smoke where there's fire and whatever. So how are you going to feel? Tell me, Sean, how are you going to feel if the Marlins sign a couple of Gurriels and then near the time as well, they move Luzardo or someone like that in a big blockbuster deal before opening day? How are you going to be feeling at that situation?
Ooh, the combination of that I'd be feeling pretty rough. And with the Soler money, I'm thinking that maybe it's a case where Sherman just said, I'm only authorizing, say, $15 million more plus what you free up from moving a Luzardo or Arias. Yeah, right. That's what's going to be added. So maybe Bendix is deciding to divide 15 by 3. So I can hit that over and get my 3 free agents. I have 3 $5 million free agents as opposed to. But if it's a bunch of small deals like that, and then they move one of their best players, that'd be pretty devastating to me, and again, it'd be devastating to a lot of his customer base. You mentioned with Sandy being out, I think they had an opportunity to run it kind of, if they just signed Soler and had brought him back, you can kind of, the average fan knows that Sandy missing is a problem. So just kind of running back the offense with just getting a little more production out of catcher and short from whatever you do. But this way it's you have the league worst offense and you take away the best home run hitter. It's that's, if you traded with the 2 best stars left on top of it, that'd be I would say
that's a white flag situation, to be honest, at that point. And so it's going to be really interesting. And this is like, it's a really fine balance, because as a fan base, I think we kind of get it. Like, we look over to the Rays and we see the model works. But to get to that model, it effectively means, we know what it means. It means like selling all of these dudes now, and this is a process. And selling the process to the fan is a tough sell, particularly after a playoff run. I'm all for it if the Marlins are just mediocre for a couple of seasons and they go, this might be time for us to rethink and do something different. Mm-hmm. But after a playoff run, to then go, trust the process, whatever all the other slogans were from back in the day when Jeter rolled in. Basically, the strategy is exactly the one that Derek Jeter said when he rocked in. And he said, we want layers upon layers of talent up and down the minors. That's effectively what Peter Bendix is saying. And we saw what happened. And so we're back to square one, strategically anyway. And this is the frustrating part is I really don't care how good the high A ball team is, to be honest with you. I want the big league club to be pushing. That's what I'm interested in. And I'm not interested in pipeline lists or prospects or none of that. It's a fool's gold. Prospects, to me, they are a fool's gold, in my opinion. They are overhyped, and we spend way too much time considering prospects, in my opinion. It's all about the big league roster. The rest of it is a nonsense. So, man, trying to sell to me, we're going to go through the process and restock the farm. Do me a favor and sell it, sell it to someone else. Sell me another one, to be honest with you, mate. You can sense my frustration, but that's the Marlins' pulse at this point, though, right? I mean, it feels like the main pulse is frustration. You're in there, I'm in there.
Yep. But come watch the Marlins. We can't blow all the trades again.
There you go.
We're gonna get some right this time around.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And listen, I'm being relatively extreme in the view here because there's some smart dudes and we just don't know what's going to happen. But we're nervous. I'm nervous. And I think we're nervous. I'm particularly nervous because it links to the past too. We saw what happened. You make these blockbuster deals, you get in this talent. Next thing is bust after bust after bust. I mean, it's ridiculous just how many busts came out of all those pieces. It's absolutely shocking. I know obviously the Ozuna one definitely played well. So, it could be one of the best trades of all time, sprinkled in maybe the word. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let's hit the ad then, mate. And then I want to talk about Josh Hader and Tanner Scott because, I think it's right that the market is set in some ways for stud lefties. And let's talk about some international free agents too. If we're thinking about 2026 or 2036 maybe, we'll talk about some free agents. But before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at eBay Motors and the sexy graphics package on those boys. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And they have over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at prices you want, easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, welcome back to Monday's edition of Locked On Marlins with myself, Peter Pratt, and Sean Miller. We are talking Ken Rosenthal articles and Marlins slander. I've gone off on a rant. Sean, it feels like, is a touch more composed than me at this point, but we'll maybe try to find a way to get him riled at some point. I did want to talk about Josh Hader and what it means for the Marlins and Tanner Scott. Josh Hader signing a huge deal with the Houston Astros. I'm interested to see how that one ages, frankly. We saw a big extension in the reliever market last offseason. I think it was the offseason. Maybe it was before. But Edwin Diaz, and that one ended up poorly. Unfortunately, poorly in some ways. So we'll see. But Tanner Scott, final year of his deal with the Marlins. I think it's fair to say, considering what we've already just discussed, that Tanner Scott is it's highly improbable he's extended, right? I mean, what's your percentage level here that Tanner Scott has any? Zero. We're at a
zero chance.
Zero chance. I mean, let's just start with Scott, though, in terms of the dollars, the money. Clearly, the track record of Tanner Scott is nowhere near quite the level of Josh Hader, but the production on the field last year was absolutely Hader-like. We are talking like elite relief stuff from the left side. What does Tanner Scott's market look like beyond this season, do you think? I mean, clearly it will depend what he puts up because he's had a bit of a yo-yo career in some ways. He's at a high now. What could the market look like for Tanner Scott? He's arguing with the Marlins still in arbitration for an under-projected deal of a couple $100,000 difference. So, yeah, where do you think this will land for Tanner after this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, like you said, and a big part of Hader's deal is, that track record, that, consistent track record. He's only had, 2 years where his ERA was over 3, and one of them was 2020, and one of them was the year he was traded. So kind of, excuses baked in. He's had just as many seasons where his ERA was under 3. Under 2, sorry. So
exactly.
Hader's great. He's been great since 2017. Tanner, a year ago, last season, fans would have rather seen Jacob Stallings come in the ninth than Tanner Scott. And then he had the season that he did last year, and he's you could argue he's the MVP of the team. In terms of what he brought down the stretch. So it's
interesting.
I would think if he did the same thing, maybe 4-60.
Big numbers, isn't it?
But even half he was going to be out of. We knew before the Hader deal he had priced himself probably out of the Marlins market if he was successful again. So but I'll say 4-60 is what he'll sign for with someone else.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, the Marlins are absolutely not going in that direction. I mean, who knows? Be a bumper pay rise for him too. Like big deal for Tanner Scott. That would be a little bit more money than the Avisel Garcia contract as well, just coincidentally on that one. So there we go. For Tanner Scott as well, I think this is a really interesting situation. To be honest, a really interesting season for him personally. Like just an absolutely unbelievable year. Like how does he follow that up? Are you expecting, like if you were to guess and look forward now, crystal ball it, and are you expecting or projecting Tanner Scott to keep that level, regress, or even progress? There is still room for growth. So what are you seeing in the future for Tanner Scott's production in 24?
I mean, I guess if I was putting money on it, I'd say regress a little bit just since he was so good. So regress in a just that's very few players sustain how effective he was last season. I still think he'll be an above average reliever. I don't see him. If he loses the closing job, I think he's hurt or has been traded, over the course of the season. So regression, but still, above average, highly effective.
Where does Tanner Scott finish the year, in your opinion? What team?
What team? Yankees. I think he'll finish with the Yankees.
Oh, baby. I'm just thinking that Tanner Scott, he looks real sexy with that stubble and whatever he's got going on. So Tanner Scott will absolutely be praying that he is not on the Yankees, I guess, but I don't know. We'll see. I think Tanner Scott ends up the year on the West Coast, and I think he ends up a Dodger at the back end of at some point anyway. It's just my gut feel, to be honest with you. I feel like there's conversations brewing already with Tanner Scott, over Tanner Scott, with the Marlins and Dodgers. It actually wouldn't shock me if a deal's done like now. And that's where like, when I think about, I think Aram Leighton went down this path too. When I think about if someone has to be sacrificed right now, if it's like we have to do something now for whatever reason, that's the approach. And that kind of doesn't make any too much sense. But if you have to do something now and it's Luzardo, Urias, Jazz, or Tanner Scott, clearly for me, like I'm moving Tanner Scott. But what about you? If someone has to go, who would it be at this stage? If it is this offseason?
I think that's the ranking. Urias, is I think I'm just ahead of Luzardo. I think for untouchableness there again, pitching is the Marlins' strength, so Urias gets the edge. Hitting is not, and all Urias does is hit. With Jazz and Scott, though, I mean, I'm kind of, Scott has shown elite MLB production. If he had another year of control left, I'd have Scott ahead easily. And that's just an interesting place to arrive at, from, again, like a year ago, think the perception is that Jazz would be the untouchable, that he's the next superstar, that's the move that would have broken the spirit of Marlins fans. But then during last year's run, I think that at least to me, I have both I've Luzardo and Arias ahead. But what about you? Would you have if Jazz was traded tomorrow, would your reaction be, how could you trade Jazz? Or would it be more, thank God it wasn't Luzardo or Arias?
It's a great question. I have a lot of fondness towards Jazz, which many listeners will probably attest to. Definitely one of his biggest fans, I would say. So it'd be painful in many ways. If I sit back and consider with Jazz, what have we actually seen on the field? Then in some ways it makes sense. And what I mean by that is Jazz has struggled to stay on the field. We can't get away from that. And the question is, how likely is that to continue beyond? And if you can sell the ceiling of Jazz and mitigate the risk of that, missing 60 games, 80 games, 100 games, whatever it might be, and just you sell a team on the ceiling, then I can understand that approach. I absolutely can. With three years of control with Jazz remaining, maybe it's 4. I don't know if he's super. I forget exactly. It's at least 3. Let's just say 3, minimum 3+. Let's call it that. So, I mean, Jazz has the potential to be an MVP level player, in my opinion, this season. Any season, frankly, with above average center field defense. I think if he pieces it together, he has it. I think he frankly has a higher ceiling than all of those guys in a general game. Arias is already at his ceiling, to be honest with you. I think Arias will only regress. So, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had around Arias, but we saw the impact he had for the Marlins last year. And boy, oh boy, he's a difference maker. And listen, the Marlins did not fade and falter hugely when Jazz was missing. Big Jonathan Davis rolled in there, and all they did was win when JD was in center field.
Welcome back.
So
JD.
it's a really interesting topic, to be honest, mate. Like, I'm personally invested in Jazz, so I'm biased in that situation. And I would feel the pain, particularly if it was like a load of prospects that, like, I don't even know who they are. And, we'll see. At the same time, I can understand why they would pull that type of deal, because the upside is immense with Jazz. The control is high. On-field production is impressive. But the injury risk, we look at the Twins and Byron Buxton now, and it feels like Byron Buxton's now like a kind of afterthought in Minnesota. Like, how many years can you keep looking beyond the injuries before it's like
a good comp?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, mate, to be honest. And I feel like this goes back to like where we started this conversation, where I just don't know what the Marlins are going to do, and I'm nervous. There's a nervousness that's sitting here at the moment, and I because I just don't know. But I'm not nervously optimistic. I'm just flat out nervous at this point, to be honest. So yeah, we'll see. I think with Tanner Scott, it's going to be he will, I think, be traded at some point this year. It makes so much sense, unless clearly the Marlins are absolutely in the thick and they feel like they need him. But I sense that a deal is going to be done. It wouldn't stun me if Tanner Scott's moved this offseason, to be honest. And it wouldn't stun me if it was the Dodgers, because the Dodgers, I think, are just like, they're all in at this moment. And Tanner Scott's clearly acquirable at this stage. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We're running out of time. I wanted to briefly touch on the international free agent situation, because the Marlins have already had they've got an agreement in principle, let's call it, for a 2025 international free agent. So they splashed a bit of cash. It was an over $1 million signing bonus for one of the guys, the center field dude, but they've got another Salas is going to be committed, over $4 million, it looks like. So a huge chunk of their international free agent pool towards Salas. All fingers now at this point, Sean, point to him being a stud, an absolute stud. For me, this really caught my eye because the Marlins, again, have been burned when going down this pathway of really lumpy international free agent signings. So your reaction on this one?
It's definitely exciting. I mean, I do flash back. I remember being really pumped when they dropped all that money on Victor. And I was like, all right, things are changing. This is part of that new trust the process Jeter direction, right? And then here we are again.
Trust the process. Big free agent, international free agent. Is it a mirror image?
The track record of them with the money they've dropped, hasn't been, great in terms of the return.
No,
but it's got to work at some point, and all the scouting, all the evidence, suggests as well that this is a stud prospect, and it's nice to see them being willing to continue to make big investments off the field. That is part of it too. That is important and part of putting out a good team. So excited to see it. Hopefully he's worthy of that stud mantle.
For sure. It's a funny old situation, this international free agency, signing and whatever. And you got these dudes that are like 16, 17, 18, and man, they're young. They are young. So, we're talking like, what are we talking here? God, we're talking like 2030 or something, or, we're in and around that range. So, man, this is long-term stuff. But again, from a Marlins perspective, it's about identifying talent, getting talent into the organization. That's what it's about. And, for this dude, if they think that the talent is there and is deserving of this like portion of the free agent pool, then great. Let's go. So I'm not against it. But as soon as you have these investments into these guys, the name will always be tracked very closely. The pressure will always be on extremely, much more than any of the other $100,000 deals and whatever. So it comes with pressure. The money comes with pressure. Pressure is a privilege, as they say. So we'll see. We've got 2 final questions I'm going to ask, and just to kind of signpost it for everyone, I'm going to ask every single guest that joins Locked On Marlins between now and opening day the same 2 questions. There may be more, but at least these 2. And these 2 questions are, who is going to be the home run leader? Because I'm thinking about Salas and replacing Salas. Who's going to be the home run leader for the Marlins in 2024? Sean, your thoughts on that one first, and then we'll cover the second question.
I'm going to go with Jake Berger. So, I'd love to tell you the big free agent they're going to sign next week is the answer to the question, because Jake's already there. But I think he's clearly the home run leader. Had a great season last year. Really seemed to hit another level when he was traded to Miami. Hit another level all season. It's a power bat. And I think 30 home runs at ease from Jake Berger. And that'll be enough to clear it for the Marlins.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that shout. I feel like that should be the odds-on favorite. Like that's a minus something in terms of FanDuel or whatever. They've got that as a
chalk pick, but
yeah, for sure.
Big on Bergers.
Yeah, he was such a good addition for the Marlins. After the deadline, again, it's why it shouldn't be in some ways too down, because you've got a full Berger rather than the half Berger, and you've got a full Bell rather than the half Bell. And, those guys had a great impact, and, they're going to be here. And, some of the guys that they've replaced aren't, and they're upgrades. And, sometimes it's addition by subtraction, and just no Segura, no Wendell offensively, no Stallings, they're getting better. So I'm with you though. Jake Berger, what a player. So he impressed me so much when he came to the Marlins. I barely saw him when he was playing for the White Sox, obviously, but such an impressive guy. And it felt like what we saw on our screens was not what we were sold. It was a different Jake Berger. So that was encouraging as well. Really encouraging. Final one that we'll get out of here because we're a couple minutes over. But this question is the most likely unlikely. It may be rephrased as we go on with the weeks, but bringing that to life, last night when I was sitting there and thinking about this, the most unlikely stat that could happen is Vidal Brujan stealing 100 or more bases for the Marlins in 2024. Brujan plays everyday shortstop and is leading off. From what we've seen in this winter league, he's got some speed, and I could see it happening. 100 plus bags. That is the most likely unlikely that I'm going with. And it is considering what the Marlins did last year in terms of stolen bases. I think he'd probably pace the team if he had 25, to be honest. But anyway, Sean, what have you got in your locker for this one? Dig deep if you can.
All right. So do you want me to put a number on it too? Or the...
No, I don't have to. You can take it as you want it.
Okay. I'll say Xavier Edwards leads the team in hits.
Oh, baby.
Is there... if I got to make it an extreme, then he'll push for that 200 total. There, he'll be up of a near best in franchise history season.
Wow!
But easily pace the Marlins in hits is my most likely unlikely.
Wow. Love that, by the way. I absolutely love that. Just to dig into that as like a follow-up wrinkle, is Arias on the roster the whole year, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
In that situation?
Okay. Arias is great. He just can't play short.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish he could. I feel like, I wonder what Arias would be like at short. I thought that last year. Like, no, I probably shouldn't think about that. He was, the numbers say he wasn't very good at second base, but my eyes said he was fine. But nevertheless, I love that one, by the way. And I love Xavier Edwards. And again, that kind of blends into like the whole Arias, when you start considering Arias in the future with the Marlins and et cetera, I kind of look around and go, Xavier Edwards is kind of like the similar dude, like clearly not quite as polished, but man, he's pretty similar. So again, if you have to move Arias, no, they don't have to do anything.
Hope they don't, but if it does, then that only helps the pick.
It does, for sure. All right, Sean, that's been awesome. I appreciate you so much for joining me on Locked On Marlins. And guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins. Yeah, for sure. It's been overdue, mate. But it's been a good one. For sure. Ken Rosenthal has blasted the Marlins. Josh Hader signed a monster deal. What does that mean for Tanner Scott? He probably will get a monster deal. Not quite that big, but won't be with the Marlins. The Marlins have made a future splash in the international free agency for 2025. So we'll look forward to that. And also, Sean throwing out there, Jake Berger will be the home run leader and Xavier Edwards, the hit leader, pushing almost franchise records with hits. Love to see it. Guys, thanks for joining us. I'll be back this week tomorrow. We'll see you then.